Could central banks worldwide coordinate to respond to this? We're seeing that happening, but are they doing enough?
Well, I think at this point, what they can really do is flood the markets with liquidity. So liquidity is not an issue. And that's what you see the Fed doing. That's what you see it doing through these swaps, so that there is no shortage of dollars across the rest of the world. But really, the issue right now for economies is getting ahead of the virus and also putting in place fiscal measures so that households that are stressed have the wherewithal to last the next 2 months when there's a complete lockdown, when small and medium-sized businesses, restaurants, have the wherewithal to at least hold on to their employees, even if they don't open. So there's a lot that needs to be done on the fiscal side. At this point, central banks are doing what they can do on the monetary side. There's also the credit side, which is where the banks come in. Can they lend in such a way that stressed businesses actually have funding over this period? You can already see a lot of businesses drawing down on their credit lines, and part of the Fed move is to make sure the banks have plenty of liquidity to meet those credit line demands.
So let's talk about the fiscal side of things. We heard from the economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, just a short time ago saying the federal government has $400 billion ready to inject into the economy. What should they be doing with that?
Well, I think at first pass, you have to try and find a way to take care of households that don't have a steady payroll job, where somebody was driving Uber cars and they can't drive over the next couple of months because there's no demand. So I think those on the gig economy, those in temporary work, the waiters, the cooks in the restaurants, you need to find a way of getting money to them. And probably the easiest way is direct cash transfers, a check to every household based on the number of people there, as well as the number of children. This is something that Jason Furman has suggested. I think it's a good idea at this point.
Is it possible, though, to do that at a time when we've never experienced the kind of supply and demand shock that we're experiencing at the exact same time? How do we get past this? Because businesses, at the other side of this, we're going to have small businesses, some of them are going to be gone forever.
Absolutely. But the issue at this point is a humanitarian one, rather than necessarily fiscal stimulus. It is about getting people enough to put food on the table. So that's why food stamps make sense. That's why direct cash transfers make sense at this point. Beyond that is the question of how do you focus on the recovery. So first, get people enough food on the table, get them to be able to take the test, to go into quarantine if necessary, etc. That's get ahead of the virus. The second is, can we help businesses that are stressed with credit to survive over this period? And as you're absolutely right, a number of them will not. But the third is then how do we create the conditions for the recovery so that there is some optimism that once we are behind the coronavirus, we will move on into a more full-fledged recovery. And that's about creating the right kind of sentiment. That's about creating the right kind of trading opportunities. Some people have advocated removing the tariffs, for example, so that when businesses are ready to operate, they have a clear environment in which to grow. So a lot needs to be done, but it's sequential. First, get ahead of the virus. Second, deal with stressed people and businesses. And third, create the conditions for recovery.
Raghu, this is Anjali here. So compare the U.S. response really to what's going on globally. I know that you've referenced how Hong Kong did in fact roll out the payments to residents. So what is the U.S. doing in comparison to what other countries are doing right now?
Well, I think the response is still awaited. I think that some of the discussion in Congress, we have to accelerate that discussion. For sure, we need to deal with stressed households, but we also need to deal with stressed firms. Some tax abatement is warranted, but also we need to think about how we get them access to credit. Certainly, the banks have said they're going to cooperate. But are there places where the federal government should step in, perhaps with short-term guarantees? These are ideas that other countries have used, for example, the United Kingdom, and we need to contemplate whether they're necessary here.
Given the market volatility and given the central bank action we've seen over the last several days, there has been a lot of comparisons made to 2008. Putting the public health crisis aside, because that is really forefront right now, what is different this time around in terms of the economic shock that we're seeing?
Well, I think this is not directly as a result of financial excess. It's a result of a shock outside the real economy, outside the financial economy. It's a pandemic. It's the first of its kind. The bad news is it's global. The potential good news, and it's still too early to say it is potential, is that it is contained, that if we can manage to get ahead of it and keep it for the next couple of months, not more, and start seeing, we can then start seeing the recovery towards the back end of this year. And that's something that is likely to be baked in if we can contain the epidemic. So this is something that depends a lot on government measures, how strong they are, how quickly we can slow the spread of the virus. But if we can do that, there is no reason why the economy cannot recover. Not to the full extent. There will certainly be businesses that go under, but there's a lot of pent-up demand then which will come back. So it's really about getting ahead of this problem.
And we hear you loud and clear. We want to thank you, Raghuram Rajan, former governor from the Reserve Bank of India, for being here on The Move.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.